Schuler, Scheeler.
And is it Patty with a Y or not?
Okay, we're gonna ask him to send this into the diocese, tell them what we're doing, and, then also included that it's been videotaped and is on Facebook, and they can find it under the St. Mark's, Beaver Dam, Facebook, whatever.
Send those links to him, send them to me too, please.
Well, I'll probably send it to you because you've got his email.
There you go.
So that way, we have gotten inquiries from Eau Claire, Spooner, Green Bay, or not Eau Claire, La Crosse,
Okay.
and Minocqua. And all of those are long distance places in the diocese.
Yeah, no, I
We're
plan,
working on maybe, how can we help get this out? I'm going to talk to Ken and Scott and see what, maybe we can put something on the diocesan webpage.
okay,
Because I know as we've been doing this and getting publicity in the diocesan paper, that helps.
Yeah.
But now how do we do it? Now, the priest at St. Mary's Dousman said they will work with us, Pat and I, on maybe using Zoom and how to do that. So there, she teaches us that. That might be a way to.
provided they've got access to it. But you could do a free version. It's good for like 15, 20 minutes.
45 minutes for.
Is it 45?
version.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I'm thinking of writing a grant for this ministry. To help cover that, and when I talked to Gary Manning at the priest at the Trinity, he said I might be able to use the diocesan Zoom account.
Yeah.
So,
But Father Mike was going to send me the electronic copies of the documents,
yeah.
but he didn't do it, so I can't put it on the videos right away. So
Yeah, so we have a lot of interest in this, so it's trying to figure out how we can do it, so.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, are we ready to start?
Okay, 1, 2,
Two.
these are the papers, these are the pages that, you did not make copies of, and I don't know why. But I'm giving you the hard copies. Well, no, we got enough copies to hand out, but for the people on the thing. So we'll just say, these pages
For sure.
weren't handed out last week, but they are available. All right, make sense? Yeah, we can play that, yes, sir. Switch.
yes, we are.
So I want to welcome Deacon REGS and Patty back for the second session on the end of life seminar. Last week was well attended, especially online. But great to have you with us. Thank you so much for your ministry among us. And with that, it's all yours. Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you. Let's begin with prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Lord, let what we do today be part of the legacy we leave behind as we journey to our home with you in heaven. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Pat has been in the financial industry in a bank, done basically every job you can, and you've cleaned the bathrooms too, haven't you?
That was very, in your sermon, I was like, I
can't tell you how many times I went off the bathroom floor.
So anyway, so Pat's gonna cover the financial information that we're asking to put in your end of life book. And as we were putting this together, we said, well, what do we call it? And we said, we're gonna call it the Doomsday Book. So you have to add a little levity to this topic. So Pat, go ahead and talk about the financial information.
Okay, and do you want to pass out to
I
everybody
will pass on
here
here.
today the section so that they can look at it as I'm talking? The financial information, it starts off with, you know, where do you have your Social Security checks direct deposit? If you have a pension, where does that go? Where are if you have IRAs or 403Bs or 401Ks, where is that money? Also, where do you keep your tax returns from past years? If you have a safe deposit box and it's in your name alone, do not put your will in it, okay? I know you think of a safe deposit box as the logical place to put it. It is not. Because if the safe deposit box is in your name alone and you pass away, that box is frozen. The bank cannot open it unless they get an order from probate court. And probate court is going to have a problem assigning your executor if they can't see your will. Is it? Okay, that could be. I don't know. I imagine every bank has their own. Yeah, if it has to be drilled, yeah, if it has to be drilled, there's a cost for that. Okay. List your bank accounts. Where do you have accounts? If you have any accounts for like grandchildren, godchildren, nieces, nephews, be sure you list that. Okay, because what happens often when someone passes away, nobody remembers that an account was open for this minor child, and the minor child probably doesn't know it was open for them. So make sure you list it. What happens in the banking industry, if there's no activity on the account for 3 to 5 years, it has to be sent to the state as unclaimed property. And you don't want that to happen.
Even if you're alive and you just haven't used
Yes.
that one?
Yes, and what the banks do, I worked in that's one of the departments I worked in. I sent out letters every year, and sometimes I sent 2-3 letters a year trying to find people and getting them to respond. You know, at least come in and update your passbook or make a dollar deposit, something to keep it active. If there's no activity on it for 3 to 5 years, it ends up getting sent to the state as unclaimed property. We have to be able to show that we've had contact with the customer. And yeah, there's a story that I'll share with you. We had a lady that had an account with us. It wasn't a huge account, but sizable enough that it was a little bit weird that nobody was doing anything with it. Well, what happened is, as her health failed, she moved away and she moved in with, I believe, her daughter. And she passed away. And the daughter was her executor or personal representative for the estate. But apparently the daughter did not know that that account was still out there and not being taken care of. And our letters we were sending out, they weren't getting apparently because the forwarding order at the post office probably had ceased. And again, I told you I was sending out these letters 2 to 3 times every year, trying to get people to respond. And I had a lady call me and she said, you know what, this account for the lady that passed away, her daughter was her executor of her estate, and the daughter has also died now. And I'm the executor for the daughter's estate. How do we fix this? And I basically said, you know what, that's a little bit above my pay grade. Let me have the bank attorney contact you, and between the attorneys, we'll let them duke it out and figure out how we can get this taken care of. Like I said, it wasn't $1 million account, but there was sizable amount in the account and it needed to be taken care of so that it didn't get sent to the state. And if you're unaware of it, Every fall, usually every fall, the local papers will run the unclaimed property list. And if you check that, you'll see that there's lots of stuff sitting in the unclaimed property division at the state that we couldn't get a hold of people.
So how do you know whether, because you get those emails that say you have unclaimed, the stuff through your, that are spamming you, and, because people are using that stuff to fill for money out of you, the fishers. So how do you know, because it says, your name has been listed 4 times, you let me money, click on this now.
No, don't click.
Don't click.
Don't click on that, that's a scam. What you want to do is go to the state, the government, it's wisconsin.gov, I believe, and then you go for unclaimed property division.
And
then
actually,
you-
anything that the state has received, it's posted out there.
It is posted, yes.
Yeah.
If you go to the government site, and don't trust an email, go to the government site and look to see. No, you can, well, the government's a little more trustworthy than an email that you got randomly. So,
That's Wisconsin.gov, unclaimed property.
right. And I'm not sure if that's the exact website, but if you go to wisconsin.gov, you can find your way to the unclaimed property division.
Use the search engine.
Yeah, use the search engine. Okay, you should list also, in your packet, list any securities you have. Do you have any stocks or bonds? Do you have a stock in a limited partnership? Do you have government securities like US savings bonds? A lot of people still have savings bonds that they're holding. Investments with a broker. List all of those things because that all has to be taken care of by your personal rep or executor. List the real estate that you own. Okay, so if you own your own home or you live in a condo, be sure you list that. But also, do you have a vacation property somewhere, up north, down south?
Yes.
Do you have a timeshare? That's important too. List all of that. Do you have, for example, a storage locker that you've got stuff stored in? That's all where your property is. So list that all in your financial. If you've made loans to other people, list that in there. Also, any loans that you have, like if you have a car loan, for example, be sure you list that so that your executor knows exactly what they're dealing with. Loans.
If you're a young person and your parents, or you're a young person and you got a loan from your parents, write that down too, so your executor knows, oh, there's a liability we need to cover.
Okay, for example, when Rex's mom died, we knew that she had given his cousin a loan so he could buy a truck. So when she passed away, she had it in her binder that, she lent him this much and she had been logging every time he made a payment to her. He was paying her every month, a little bit every month, but he still had an outstanding balance. So to clear up her estate, he had to call his cousin and say, you know what? I see you still owed mom this money, and to clear up the estate, we have to clear this up. Can you go out now and refinance this with a financial institution so that we can reimburse the estate so I can close it? So, and he did. He did. That was not a problem. I know quite often that folks lend money to their kids or their grandkids. So make sure you make a note of that. Credit cards. List what credit cards you have. Story about that is when Rex's mom passed away, she had a couple of credit cards she kept in her wallet that she used all the time. But we went through her desk and she had a stack of credit cards this big. And we had to contact all of those companies. So some of them were active and some of them were not. But list them so your executor knows what you've got out there so that they can take care of it. Okay, one of the sheets in your financial section, it says monthly budget.
This was not handed out last week, but there are a number of pages that have it. We've given Father Mike the the hard copy so he can make copies for you. We will reference them during this, but we will hand it out to the people who are here.
So the online people, you can see me and I'll have copies for you.
Okay, this monthly budget sheet, this is just a sample. Do your own thing. But, yeah, we do something like this in our household, because I take care of all the bills, and I list everything that's due for this month, and then as it comes in and I pay it, I check it off, so that if there's something happens to me, Rex can pick it up and say, oh, she paid the first two, but the rest of this I have to take care of. Take the time to sit down with your spouse, your significant other, if you have a roommate, whoever's going to pick up the ball if you're become incapacitated, so that they know what the bills are for the month and what you've paid and what you still have outstanding, so that they know where to pick up the ball. It is. And we've talked to a number of people, and you don't have to use my sheet. This is my draft, but we've talked to people that have a spreadsheet that they keep track of it, and that's fine, whatever works for you. But take the time to sit down with whoever would cover for you. Let's say you had to go in for surgery and you're stuck in the hospital for a couple of weeks. That can happen. Who's going to handle your bills? Do they know where to find everything? Can they tell where you left off? Take the time to show them. Now, one of the sessions we did, I told them, make sure if you're the guy or the gal in your household that does all the bills, sit down with your significant other, your spouse, your roommate, whoever, and go over the bills with them periodically, just so they know what's happening, okay? The fella in the class says, well, I'm a CPA. I've always done the finances for my family. And I said, okay, does your wife know what you have and how you go about paying the bills? I got crickets. He goes, okay, I'm going to go home and talk to her. Well, he came in the next week and he goes, oh my God, Pat, she had no clue what we had. She had no idea where we had accounts. She didn't know how she would have paid the bills if I'd gotten hit by a bus. And I'm like, that's why I want you to talk to her about it. Sit down, even if it's once a year, and go through it with her so she knows. There's nothing more heart-wrenching than sitting, and I did this as a banker, sitting with somebody, surviving spouse in my office, crying because they don't know what they have, they've never paid the bills, and they don't know how to even begin. I had one gentleman, an elderly gentleman, he said, after high school, I went into the service. When I came out of the service, I got married. So when I was in high school, my parents took care of everything. When I was married, my wife took care of everything. He goes, I don't even know how to write a check. I said, okay, let me show you how to write a check. And so I had to teach him, because I'm not stupid. I said, no, you're not. But if you never did it, how would you know? How would you know?
Well, and like we discussed how we're gonna pay the bills, but you made me think about, do I know the password for Ray's computer so that I could get to the emails? Because a lot of that stuff's electronic payments.
That's right.
And I know what we're paying, but I don't know that I know how we pay it, because she pays the bills, she's the end of it. So we have those conversations, but I don't pay the bills.
Well, maybe she should have you do it one month, just so you know how to get in there and take care of it. A year ago, I broke my arm in 3 places up in the shoulder area. And I'm right-handed, and I was still writing checks for the bulk of our bills. Obviously, I wasn't writing any checks after I broke my arm. So Grace and I sat at the kitchen table and go, okay, now you gotta pay this one, and this is how you do it. And then you gotta pay this one, and this is how you do it. Now, next week, these 2 bills are gonna come in, you're gonna have to pay this. And he had to write all the checks. And I think he found it a little frustrating, because I have a system for how I did it, and it's obviously his system and my system don't match.
Just because they do it different doesn't mean it's wrong.
Wrong, that's right.
And that's what Bob told me when he retired. I mean, you stop different than you do, but it's not wrong.
Not
It's
wrong.
just
different. And what I do with regs is, I have a sheet, it's not this one anymore, because I've made some changes to it. But I tally up what our bills are for the month at the very bottom of the page, so he knows whether we're staying within our budget or not. And he looks at these just about once a month. Just-
Really,
weekly.
really,
And what's being paid on that?
Yes, and that's important too. If you have stuff set up to pay automatic, your spouse needs to know that, because if something happens to you, they may want to stop that payment for some reason. You know, if you're having your health insurance automatically deducted for you out of your checking account and you pass away, well, he needs to contact the health insurance agency and say, hey, we've got to stop this. She passed away. I'm not going to pay for services that she's never going to be able to use. So,
Netflix.
yeah, if you have a,
Netflix, you wanna make sure, that it's canceled, because if you don't, they're gonna keep charging you.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna refund.
I'm thinking about why the balance is always screwed up on your checkbook, because there are things that are being automatically taken out that I didn't know.
right,
And
right.
I can't get the checkbook to balance, because I don't do it.
Well, that can happen. We do stuff automatic, I do stuff over the internet now. Almost everything I pay over the internet. There's a few that I can't yet. But I pay most everything over the internet, but I manually do it over the internet. I go in and say, okay, you can take this much this month, and not have it an auto draw. There's only a couple of things we have auto draw.
Life insurance on there.
Life insurance on the grandchildren, that comes as an auto draw. But other than that, I go in and I manually tell them, okay, you can draw this much for the bill this month. It's convenience for me. I like to have a little bit of control.
That's a good idea.
Because you know what happens if you have a bill, like your electric bill, for example, or or if you have cable or one of those services, they can up the fee and not have advised you. And you were subtracting out X amount of dollars, assuming that's what they were gonna take. And in the meantime, services are more expensive and they took a larger amount, can really screw up your checkbook. So that's why I like control. Do you want to do final arrangements? Or do you want to comment on some of the things I didn't cover here?
No, I think you did, look what, why don't you talk about, the POD, POA?
Okay, we talked about it briefly last time. On your accounts, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts and so forth, you can do POD, pay on death beneficiaries, list the beneficiaries that you want to get that money, should you pass. What'll happen is, when you pass away, the beneficiaries just need to show your death certificate and their identification, proving who they are, and that money gets paid out to them. It does not have to go through probate. Okay. You can do that on big ticket items too, like if you own a home or car, you can do what they call a transfer on death. In essence, you're naming beneficiaries on them, those two big ticket items. We did it with our home about a year or so ago, and what it required is we had to go to an attorney and do the proper paperwork, and then they recorded it with the register of deeds. So
But when somebody dies, how many death certificates do you need?
I would get 10 to 15 at least.
15, yeah.
I say 20.
20 is good too. What happens is,
Tell them why.
the funeral home will ask you how many you want. And oftentimes they'll offer you maybe 5 or 10. I would get more than that, because almost every credit card company will want to see the death certificate. The bank will want to see the death certificate. Insurance companies want to see it. There's so many places where they want to see that death certificate. So getting 15 to 20 is a good idea.
But if you run out, so there's a fee for it.
Yeah.
If you run out, then you, for the next one, it's the original cost. So it's like, it's kind of like the books. If you buy 25, you get them for $1 a piece. So if you run out, you're back to $20. Otherwise, they're $1.25 or $3. So it's a lot cheaper to just order the 20 and throw some away than it is to have to order 2 or 3 times. Because now you're paying $60 or $100, and you could have paid 23 or 26.
We got 8 from Mark because he didn't have squats, so we didn't need anything. He didn't have
But if you
anything.
really know, like, but for most people, they, I mean, if you are involved in their stuff and you know what you're gonna need, that's one thing. Most people do not.
But who knew? We're holding on to one last death certificate because, holy crap, people need those. And we only got 8.
Yes.
I should have gotten 10, 12.
Well, and if you go back and request them,
Exactly.
they charge you because now they have to go back in the records and look up the information, and then they make the copies for you, and they charge you more. They charge you for research, and they charge you additional for the copies, more than you paid originally.
Well,
So that's why I get lots.
You're okay yet.
Okay, so that's
And
why
they've
you get
also
lots.
changed it so that some people are taking a copy of them, and they used to not do that at all.
Right,
Now, so you can ask, will you take a copy, because you could make a copy for them. If they change their policy, now accept that.
some places do and some don't, but you just don't know who.
I don't know that I should.
No, that's true, that's true. People would come into the bank and they'd bring us the original death certificate, and we'd make a photocopy and then stamp it that this is a true and original, a true copy of an original, that we got the original. We didn't keep it, but we made a copy of it for our records. So some places will do that, some will not. They want the original. It has to have the seal on it in order for them to accept it. Okay, just so you know, power of attorney, if you have power of attorney, people appointed for your accounts and so forth, for your finances, be aware, power of attorney ceases at your death. So they can't go in after you die and do any transactions on your behalf. It has to go through the executor.
But there's paperwork you can do at the bank for the right to get stuff out of the bank after death. But that's a whole nother.
That's the power- that's your
for the
beneficiaries.
executor.
Right.
Power of attorney is one, executor is another, and the executor is that's the person after death. It can be the same person, but it has to be designated in your will or in the paperwork at the bank who has that authority.
But most people don't think to get that particular paperwork done.
That's why we do these workshops.
Right.
We get into that.
Right,
They don't have it for the first.
right, because power of attorney ceases at death. Okay, because the way they legally look at it is, once you die, you can't give power anymore. So that's why, right? Okay, we talked briefly about how you have your accounts. If you are husband and wife, I recommend that you set your accounts up joint with right of survivorship. That is how most financial institutions will set up the joint account. What that means is, for example, REGS and I have a joint account. If I die, all the money in that account belongs to him now, right of survivorship, okay? That's typically how the bank will set it up. You also want to be careful of joint account with somebody who's not your spouse, okay? And the reason for that being is, if I have a joint account with one of my children, and let's say they got into a horrible car accident and now they're being sued, because they're on that account with me, they can go after that money in a lawsuit. So be aware of that. Also, if you have somebody on as joint for convenience rather than power of attorney, what happens is, because they're joint with right of survivorship, they get that money. So for example, when my grandmother passed away, she had set up accounts and she had my uncle on for convenience on her accounts jointly. When she passed away, she had intended money to go to the grandchildren, and we got nothing
Oh, sure.
because he was the joint owner on all of her accounts, all that money went to him, and he did not share. So, he did not follow her wishes.
And legally didn't have to.
Legally did not have to. That happened with REGS' mom. I was power of attorney for her because I worked at the bank. It was convenient for her. Pat, renew this, or Pat, do this, right? She'd call me. And I could do it because I was her power of attorney. But she had me joint on one account. I was joint on one account. And that worked out perfectly, because what happened is when she passed away, the account I was joined on, I could pay for the vault and the opening of the grave and so forth from that account. And then the attorney says, well, Pat, technically with right of survivorship, that money's yours. I says, no, it's not. Mom put me on there so that I could access, so I could pay for these things that we needed to pay for off the top. And I said, put it into the estate and divide it amongst the children as directed by her will. That money was not intended for me. And lo and behold, she surprised me. She took out a small life insurance policy, and I was the sole beneficiary.
Just proves my mom loved her more than she loved me.
We had mothers like
Yeah.
that. One like the other.
Yeah, well, like I said, she surprised me. I didn't know. It wasn't a huge policy, but nevertheless, that was a very thoughtful thing for her to do. And I think part of it is REGS was going to get some payment as the executor of the estate, from the estate, but I wasn't, and she knew I was going to be helping him through.
Majority of the work.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but, helping him through, and she knew that I would be the one that would
The
be
financial stuff.
helping him with the financial stuff, so I think that's also why she did it.
People in our families have been executors for parents and brothers and whatever, but nobody ever got paid for doing that. So if you do get paid for being the executor, how do you know how much they're to get?
I think the state stipulates that.
Yeah.
And I think it's 4%. Okay, it could be 2% or it could be 4%. I'm not sure. The lawyer told us that, and when he first told us that, I said, well, I don't feel comfortable doing it. After working with this estate for 9 months, I said, no, I'm going to take that. And it wasn't a lot, but it was just.
It kind of compensated for all of the time and energy and stress, because there's a lot. So,
And I mean, and she didn't have all this stuff that we're handing out, so I mean,
Yeah.
that's what made it difficult. I mean, the credit cards, just calling on the credit cards, it took 2 weeks. So,
okay, do you want to do?
let me there's a couple of things in here. COVID, if you have a 401, and you die, that goes to your spouse. If it goes to your grandchildren or your children, the law right now stipulates they have to draw that account down to 0 in 10 years. They can take a little bit each year, or they can take it all at one lump sum. You got to be careful, because that's counted as income, and the government is going to charge you income tax on it. So you want to be aware of that.
Another suggestion is, so when you take that money, you can pay the taxes upfront or later. I suggest you always pay the tax. Because when then they load it onto your taxes, that's happening to us this year, and it is killing us.
What is
So-
saying?
And the thing, talk to your financial advisor about it. And if you don't have a financial advisor, I suggest you get. For one reason, statistically, if you have a financial advisor, your income that will be 3 times what what you would do if you were just doing it by yourself. Our financial advisor, he has us, and he says, you can take this much money out, but if you take $1 more than this, you're going to be in this tax bracket. So we're going to keep you in this tax bracket instead of the next one. And our financial advisor also does our taxes, so he knows, how to juggle that.
And ask how much income you need to make that year before you go to the next tax bracket. How close am I?
Yeah. So we always go in, he always has us come in usually November, and he says, all right, this is where you're at. And any talking, when we do our taxes, he says, okay, this is where you're at. But if something changes, let us know so we can keep you. So we're talking about it early in the year, and then we review it at the end of the year, so we got enough buffer to do it. So the other one I want to talk about is what's called the widow's tax. And if you're married and you file jointly, you get some deductions. But if one of the spouses die, now you're not getting that married deduction, and you're a single person, and the government is going to come after you for that money. Our financial advisor has a saying, the government knows it's hard to get money from a living person, so they figure out they can get it from a dead person a lot easier. So,
I mean, if your spouse dies halfway into the year,
yeah.
and you are no longer.
If halfway through the year you still can collect, my understanding as a married,
The year in which the person passed away, that tax year, you can still file jointly. But the year after that, you're filing as an individual.
and if you're not aware of it, it'll surprise you. So that's another reason why you want to have a financial advisor work you through this. So,
Regs, for someone being an executor of somebody's estate, my understanding is you want to document anything you spend, because if you have to travel, any of your travel expenses, if you're not staying at the person's home, if you have to get a hotel or air flight, you gotta get all of that so that you can basically be reimbursed by the estate.
yeah.
That's correct.
Because you got to think of it this way: as an executor, that's a business.
Yeah.
And you get to deduct business expenses. All right. Next thing we're going to cover is financial arrangements, final arrangements, what's covered in there, and that should be in your packet is, first of all, you want to contact the church. One reason you want to contact the church is you want to make sure that the church is available. For example, 2 people died in the parish, and they went to the funeral home, and they went to different funeral homes, and they said, okay, we will do the service, we'll do it this time, and so it was all arranged. And then they contacted the church, and the church says, I already have a funeral at that time, or a wedding. Let the clergy person be your concierge and go through this. First of all, they're trained to be pastoral and help with the grieving process, help you go through the process. So the first person you should contact is the clergy person. I'm going to take a side note here. I think one of the most beautiful services in the prayer book it's called ministration at the time of death. I have performed this a number of times. I've done it with my grandmother, I've done it with my mom, and I've also done it with my parish priest. The family called me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and says, Father has passed, can you come over and do it? And you get the family around the bed and you do it. And it's one of the most beautiful liturgies we have in the prayer book. So, anyway, so in the final arrangements, first of all, you contact the clergy person. And then there's questions. Open classic, closed classic, location of ceremony, type of ceremony. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You're adult. You can read. It. It's a checklist. Questions to ask when considering cremation. In the Episcopal Church, there's a right one, right two. The Father Mike can work with you on that. There are suggestions on hymns. Readings. You can select people that you want to do readings, your pallbearers, whatever. This is a copyrighted thing, so I don't hand it out, but most churches have it. This is the Episcopal Musician's Handbook. And in there, they have suggested hymns that's available on the next page where you can have hymns. I was talking to a deacon as we were driving up to convention, and she said, "Oh, I want to have a lot of music." And so I looked at her. There's 9 places she could have music in her service. They're going to be in church all day long. Anyway, so that's it. What I have done over the years is in my prayer book. If we sing a hymn and I go, "Oh, I really like that," I write that down. I like that hymn. So we had about 8 hymns that I liked when we did our funeral arrangements worksheet. And I said, well, let's use one of those hymns. But I wrote it down. If you sing it in church and go, "Oh, I really like that. This is the hymn I'd like for my funeral," write it down. Next thing we have is life insurance. And that was handed out last
Can you
week.
go back just a bit? Be sure you sit down with whoever would be your executive to let them know what your wishes for your final arrangements are. We were at a parish, and the parish priest said we had a parishioner, an elderly lady, very active in the church. She came to services 3-4 times a week. She was part of Altar Guild, part of ECW. She was just extremely active, and she passed away. Well, what happened is her family were not church people. So they did not have a funeral mass for her at the church, where she had been a member for years and years and years and so active. And they did a celebration of life for the deceased at a local tavern, which is fine, but there was nothing at the church. And the parish priest goes, "I know she would have been just crushed that we didn't have some kind of service for her with her parish family." And the parish family was very upset by it. So what he did is he set up a memorial service for her so that the parish family could take part and take some time to grieve the loss of this lady. So if this is what you want, be sure you spell out what you want, and be sure you tell whoever your executor or your family members that would be making the decisions what you want, so that they know.
2 suggestions. One, you can take your clergy to the planning. So I've been to many, in fact, I invite myself often, because the funeral directors know that I have to be there. It's one-stop shopping. So if you're going to do a funeral plan as a family, always the day after the death, usually you are called into the funeral home and to make the arrangements for that. So one is call the priest or the deacon and have them come with you, because an extra set of ears and eyes when you're in a agitated state, and it's pretty hard to not be in an agitated state when someone dies. That's one. And 2 is don't ever let a funeral director tell you when you can and can't, what you can and can't. They are working for you, and they love to act like you're working for them. And you're paying a lot of money for these services. And so if you want a Tuesday at 11, that's inconvenient for the funeral director, let him figure out or her figure out how they're gonna make that work. If you wanted a Tuesday at 11 and you have a reason for that, they don't get to tell you it has to be Wednesday at 3. Because it's a paid service and they're making plenty of money on funerals. They should be accommodating to your needs. And lots of people are like, well, I couldn't. The funeral director told me. Don't let him tell you. And if you have the clergy there, then you don't have to do it, then I do it.
Yeah. So remember, funeral parlors is a business. And they're going to, they're going to sell you anything they can. And one of the things they'll do, if you don't have your preferences in the paperwork we've just handed out, they'll say, oh, don't you think your mom deserves this? They will guilt you into spending more money. And, like I said, it's a business. All right, I handed out the insurance papers. And the insurance papers are companies or organizations holding life insurance on you. When Pat worked at the bank, they had life insurance on her, which ceased when she left. Some companies will say, when you leave, you can continue with that life insurance, but now you pay premiums. I've had companies had insurance on one of their employees, but they were the beneficiaries of that insurance policy. And you go, well, why would you do that? Well, first of all, I had it on me, and I was general manager of the foundry. If I had died, the company would have had to search, do a search to find a replacement for me, maybe fly people in for interviews and things like that. So they had money set aside in an insurance policy to cover the expenses in finding my replacement. So that's not unusual that companies do that. In here, as you page through it, you'll see other insurance policies. Pata has already mentioned under when she was talking about automatic deduction, where we have insurance policies on our children and on our grandchildren. So that needs to be in this section. So they know there's insurance policies there, and they can either cash in the policy and get a cash value, which is very little, or they can, continue paying the premiums on that. We have done that because, we have one policy that we have on the grandchildren. Well, we have 6 grandchildren. It's the same policy. It's $15,000. But when they turn 18, now it's $30,000. But I think the premiums on that is about $3 a month.
They're all under $10.
They're all under $10. So that's a cheap insurance policy. And if they want to keep it, that's fine. Next thing that I'm going to hand out is personal gifts.
You're handing out personal gifts.
It's a sheet for personal gifts. Pat, can you find that for me? I can't. No, I took all the stuff here, and I'll just pull it out of the book here. Out of file. On personal gifts, one thing, is we suggest one that you handwrite it. And reason you handwrite it is, somebody says, well, I wanted that ring. Well, Mom wanted it to go to, well, how do you know that? 1, it's written down. 2, it's written down in her handwriting. One of the things, number 11. So we'll find it here, but it's what we did with my mom, we'd be at my mom's house. She said, "You see this ring? I want this to go to Aunt Esther." Mom, write it down. Well, I'm telling you, Mom, write it down. I said, when you die, I'm putting a dumpster in the driveway and I'm putting everything in the dumpster unless you tell me where it goes. In writing. She would get so mad at me. But guess what? She had written down a lot of that stuff. Pat and I are going to have talked about upping this a little bit. I mean, I have a ring that I got from my dad that he bought after he came out of service in World War II in Seattle. It's a ruby ring with a diamond in the center. You know, I don't know what the cost of that ring. It might only be $75. But what's important is the sentimental value and the story behind it. Well, why don't we use this one, Pat, that I got sitting up here? That's important. Pat has some crystal. The significance of the crystal, and Pat, I'm going to tell them here. You tell the crystal story, and I'll hand out the stuff that I was hiding.
I'm taking my photos for that.
Okay, the crystal, after, I have relatives from Czechoslovakia. Okay, my great uncle lived in Czechoslovakia with his family. And during World War II, as you know, Europe was virtually destroyed. I mean, it was a mess. And my great uncle wrote and said his daughter was wanting to get married, but they couldn't get anything for her a wedding dress because Europe was a mess. Could Grandma and my mom send him some fabric so he could have a seamstress make a dress for her? So my mom and Grandma went shopping and they bought the satins and the laces and the organza and all of that, shipped it over to him, shipped a big box of it over to them. Well, he was so excited that they did that. Now, my great uncle was a glass blower. And what he did is he sent his daughter, he had made a wedding set for his daughter of crystal. It's mostly goblets and some dessert plates and torte plates and stuff. He sent that all to my mom as a thank you for sending the wedding fabrics. And he had sent other stuff after because he was so thankful that they did so much stuff for him because, like I said, World War II really made a mess out of Europe and they had nothing. And so I have a whole set. I have the set that was the wedding set. My sister has a set that was another set that came later. And he was an award-winning glass blower. So what he sent is gorgeous, just gorgeous. Now, I don't know that any of my kids will want the crystal, but I don't want them to just throw it away or give it away to Goodwill or something. I want them to know the significance of it.
The story behind it is important.
The story behind it is important. And if they don't want to keep it themselves, find somebody who will appreciate it, you know?
They can't sell that stuff. Nobody wants it.
Nobody wants it.
Nobody's got Shannon cabinets anymore.
Right.
Our granddaughter, who's 17 years old, she was over a couple of weeks ago, and we said, "You see the silver? It's plated silver." I says, "When you move out of the house and you need silver, take this. At least you can use it." Next thing we're going to hand out is the password organizer. Now, this is only a couple of sheets. What Pat and I have is we have a little booklet. It almost looks like it's set up A, B, C, D, E, F, G booklet, and all our passwords are in there. But this here is, just a notebook might be enough. But on the stuff that Pat's going to be handing out is, the company and the email, username, the password, and then sometimes the security answers that they ask. So all that is on this sheet. And that's important for your executor to have.
Where do you keep that you're not afraid somebody's gonna break in and steal it? Now somebody's got all that.
Well, that's why we have a safe at home and we keep that locked up.
I'm coming to your house to say this, where I'm going first.
Okay, you know how to open the safe?
Well, I'm gonna have to steal it or blow it up.
Okay, the other thing is, we have all this information on a flash drive. And we say the flash drive is also in the safe. So our children know that, the executor knows that, so they can get this information off the flash drive.
What is you are?
That's like the website. What website do you go to?
I don't have anything on
Okay.
that.
Bobby will tell you that no place is safer on earth than putting something in a safe with me trying to open the safe.
Bobby's the only one that opened the safe. Bobby and Fred at church. Don't ever try to.
The next thing Pat's gonna be handing out is the key organizer. Write down, the keys you have on your key ring, the keys you may have in a box. The key description, where the lock is located, where the key is located.
You don't know what
Yeah, when we did ours, there was one key we could not figure out what it opened. It was 6 months later, I came running in the house, I says, Pat, I know what key that belongs to. It's the backup key for the lawnmower. It looked different than the key that was in the lawnmower, because the key in the lawnmower had a big fob on it. The backup key was just a stamped key that was just simple. So that's a key organizer. It's important. My mom had a box. You heard about the credit card? She had a box of keys. And trying to find out where those keys went, well, we probably never did. The next thing Pat's going to hand out is, like we call it, letter to my loved ones. And while Pat's handing that out, I'm going to read this to you. I suggest this is just a format. You look at it and see what you want to use and add to it. But what the letter is, to my loved ones, I have recorded the information contained in my personal planning guide for your peace of mind, as well as my own. I have spent many hours preparing this guide for you in hopes of making my passing and final arrangement less time-consuming and stressful for you. I sincerely hope it will spare everyone unnecessary grief, distress, and expense at the time of my death. It means a great deal to me to know that I have taken steps to eliminate as much as possible the burden of decision-making in this matter and preventing indecision in different points of view. I have tried to complete this information with much love and thought, knowing that it might cause greater distress if these decisions were left for you to make without any indication of my wishes. I sincerely hope that you will find these arrangements in accordance with your own wishes. It is my most sincere intention that information will ease the burden as much as possible. In my letter that I'm going to write is I'm going to say, one of the things I hope you remember is the time I spent on soccer fields coaching you and watching your games. The joy that it made, that it brought to me. So there's personal remembrances I'm going to include in that letter that you can add to it. But I think that what's important is your legacy. that which you leave behind. And what that which you leave behind is just what we handed out to you last week and this week, is these are your wishes for those you leave behind to make that part of going home to heaven important and less stressful for your families, for your executives. And I suggest you handwrite that, because I think handwritten is really important. Father?
I think you should put this in there as it is, sign it and put it in, and then staple to it your hand note. Because Mom did that, she wrote each of us a note, and then Heidi had that note put onto a plaque with a picture of me and Mom. So I have a plaque of my mom's handwriting with the note that she wrote me. And like I told you before, everything in Mom's notes, we didn't read Dad's, but the three of us got to read each other's. Everything in those notes was wrong. Because people had died that she wanted to be part of it. And almost nothing she wanted did we do, but we had that handwriting from Mom, right? And so this is a great letter because it talks about why you did this.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change a word on this. So what I'm going to do is sign this and staple my letter to each people up once, because I love the idea. And don't just think about, the straight lines. Anybody that might bear some grace from you, and put it all together. So when they hand it out, they hand it to Aunt Lucille or Uncle Joe, whoever, all in one spot. This is a great letter, just to tell them why you spent all this time so that their life would be easier in this moment of pass. Cool stuff.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, we've given you a lot of homework to do.
Oh my goodness.
If you get it done in 6 months, let Pat and me know, we'll give you a gold star. It's going to take you time. But what I suggest you do is when you can complete a section, when you complete the 5 wishes, sit down with your children, your executor, your power of attorney, and say, we've just done this. We want you to know about it. And, it's a short conversation. Death is a tough topic to talk about. But take the 10 minutes, sit down and do it, and you can be done with it.
I will tell you that the more you talk about death with those you love, the easier it is when you're going through it. The more, because people become comfortable as it doesn't carry as much stigma as it carries. And the only way to get through that is
I organized a workshop for the deacons in the diocese at St. John's Home on ministry to the elderly. And the priest at St. John's Home was one of the speakers, and she said, the Buddhists have a saying, he who contemplates death daily lives a fuller life. I talked to Father Pei, who was a Benedictine monk for a while, and I said, why does the abbot, the head of the monastery, have a skull on his desk? And he says, to remind us that we are mortal. So
I did order Deacon REGS 25 more of the 5 wishes booklets. So if you have other people that could benefit from this, we'll have them as well as copies of all the stuff that you brought, extra copies. So I'll have a packet for anybody you want to bring in and give it to.
also, if you sit down with them and they say, you know what, this is a good idea, Pat and I will sit down with them one-on-one and go through it. We just talked to our daughter. You want to?
Yeah, we were talking to our daughter on the phone the other day, and I asked her if they had done their healthcare power of attorneys yet. And she said, well, no. And I said, don't you think you should? Because what if something happens? I mean, her husband, he works in a very dangerous job. If something would happen to him, do you know what his wishes would be? Let's say he's in a coma or he's unable to make decisions for himself. Do you know what he'd want? Well, no. And so we talked to her about 5 wishes and she goes, that sounds like the way we can go. Send that to us.
Do you, can you designate more than one person? Can you like order who gets, like, if mom's POA is dad, and then after dad, who it would be? Can you-
Yeah, we have, in ours, we're not using the 5 wishes as ours because we have an attorney draw up ours. And we have, the first person is this. If that person is not available, then this is the next person. So,
Because I gotta tell you that, dad was mom's POA, but his ability to make decisions was not what it would have been if it wasn't his wife.
Yeah.
And so, the 3 of us, I mean, and because we have a good relationship and it was seamless, we just got behind dad. But I'm thinking, it's not always the person you think it's gonna be, that, I mean, and they may be absolutely living, but unable to be the one to make decisions.
that is one reason on why you need to talk to the person to do that. We have talked to a number of people during this workshop where they've asked people to be their health power of attorney, and they've been turned down. In fact, we talked to one person, he said, I've talked to 6 people and they've all turned me down. So make sure they're willing to do it and talk to them about it, and so they know your wishes. The other thing is, Pat and I, we review these documents every year. When she gets ready to do the tax returns and she's getting everything ready for the tax return, she goes through this information. We sit down and we'll probably take up half an hour. Once it's done, it doesn't take long to review it. This year, before this year, we were going to be buried. This year we decided, you know what, cremation might be the better way of going because it'll be easier for the family and less expensive. Not much less expensive, but less expensive, but easier on those we leave behind. So we changed it. But so we review this, yearly, and you can make those decisions. And if the person you designate is out of state, well, no, maybe you want to pick somebody that's in state. At one time, the state said you had to be a resident of the state to be the executor. That's been changed in the last 15 years. So, any other questions?
Now, are any of you computer savvy? You can stuff on your computer?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
if you want, I can send these forms electronically to Father Mike and he can relay them to you.
yeah, do that.
Because with the electronic file, you can go in on a computer and just type in the lines. You don't have to handwrite everything. Saves on the hand cramps. And you can tweak it. I mean, some of the things may not apply to you, like some of the real estate owned, maybe you only have the house that you live in now, and you don't need all those extra lines. You can delete all that if you want. You can adjust the lines and stuff. Or if you have more passwords than I gave you sheets for, which most people do, go ahead and make more pages. You can copy and make more pages. So we can send the electronic files to Father Mike if you want.
Yes.
Everything we've handed out, it is not copyrighted. Make as many copies as you need. Make copies and hand them out to your children, your neighbors, whoever, if you want.
And
Any other questions?
The 2 things that are copyrighted, we will have a copy of the 5 wishes book. And then if you want to sit down with me and go through the musician's handbook to pick out the tunes, we always buy 3 copies, 1 for each of our musicians. So we can certainly borrow you the book, sit down and make sure, because that's really helpful.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for being
Well, thank you for doing this. We have one other task. and I'm gonna ask the three of you to come on up with Pat and me. Pat, come on up. Buzz is gonna take a photograph, and we're gonna put this in the dais. Oh, if you wanna come up too, our video photographer, this was being recorded, and it's going to be on
Facebook and YouTube under our St. Mark's.
okay, Facebook and YouTube under St. Mark's Beaver Dam. So you can,
Lots of St. Mark's, so St. Mark's Episcopal and Beaver Dam stands.
that one, come on over, come on up.
So I'll go right there. I'm gonna get myself a steak too.
Hello.
So if you move more towards the center.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's what
Okay,
it's covered. But yes, I will also get you the YouTube URLs.
That's the website.
So first one of you guys and then one with me. This, all the Latinos happy, so now I have to. All right.
are we all close enough for you?
Oh, yeah, I got it.
If you can't see the camera can't see you. So.
Now. See what you're talking, Jim? So, every Latino I met had a sofa stick like this. They're like $15 on Amazon, and they are great.
Why, do they take a lot of pictures?
Oh,
Well, you can.
The most
put yourself
wired-
in the picture.
subgroup in our country is Latinos. And they know their stuff, so they're on social media. My kids have got it now. Yes. The guy's on.
Yeah.
Watch this. Alright. Ah!
Why don't we wait about 2 weeks? Because St. Mary's hasn't put theirs in yet.
Okay. I will wait 2 weeks.
We just finished, and just to let them go in, and then we'll have you come in.
Well,
And
and
then
then
we'll-
send out the backs with a note saying, put these in after St. Mary's. So I don't
Okay,
forget-
that would work, that
So I
would
don't
work,
forget to do.
yeah, that would work too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here 2 Sundays. It was great having you, both Deacon and being with us. And then this is fantastic. And the gift of live stream. We do that quite a bit, actually. When Mr. Beaver comes, he lets us live stream too, because our outward reach is huge. We have people all over the country that come